welcome those that are online. He already did that. My name is Eric. I'm the senior pastor here. First of all, I just need to say that this shirt, Yellowstone, is not the TV show, okay? I'm not a jump on the bandwagon. It's from Old Navy, all right? So, okay, I gotta tell you the truth. I had another example I was gonna tell you, but on the way here, or this morning, I had a perfect real life example that just exactly what I'm gonna talk about today. So I got up this morning and I get on this forum that I'm on for fly fishing and stuff like that, and I see a friend of mine in Pensacola, excuse me, I'm so excited, is selling a brand new fly rod that he bought, but then he only cast it a few times in the yard, and then for whatever reason decided to sell it, and he's selling it half price. And so I messaged him right away, said, dude, I'll take that fly rod, I'll Venmo you after church, blah, 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 blah. So I'm on my way to church and I get a message from him. He says, cool, it's got your name on it, da-da-da. And he goes, but I don't take Venmo. So can you do PayPal or Zelle? And I was like, well, the problem is I don't have PayPal, my wife does, and she kind of can't know about me buying a fly rod during the Christmas holidays. And he was, so if anybody can launder this for me today, I'd really appreciate that. Because he messaged me back and says, I know the drill, I'm married too, so everything's good. But here's why I say this is my problem. Have you ever gone through the 5 love languages, and one of them is gifts? Is it gift giving? See, they don't have mine as gift receiving. That's my love language. If yours is gift giving, we can make a perfect partnership because I love to get gifts. And it's really frustrating this time of year because this is the time of year you're supposed to be thinking about other people and shopping for other people. And here I am. That's why I can't let my wife know, because I'll be like, hey, honey, I need some money to buy you a Christmas present. And she'll go, you spent this much money on a fly rod. So I can't let her know. But it's so frustrating because I am supposed to be thinking about other people. And then when I go to the stores, I see what I want. Or even worse, it's not easy this time of year because I don't go to stores anymore. But what makes it worse is when I go do the shopping online, when I'm shopping, they say things like this to me. You may also like, anybody ever get that on when you're shopping online? Or customers also viewed, and they show me what else that I'm supposed to buy with the thing that I'm buying. Or customers who bought this also bought this, right? And they just keep dangling this stuff in front of you. Or this one, when you even turn it on, you go to Amazon, related items you've already viewed. Like I haven't even done a search yet, and they're trying to show me stuff that I've already, hey, here's some stuff that you looked at, but you didn't buy. You might want to think about this again, and they put that up there. Or frequently bought together with this, right? And so my question is, how in the world are you supposed to be content with what you have when they keep dangling all this other stuff in front of you, right? That's my problem, because let's be clear. The problem is because I didn't need this fly rod. It was one of those fly rods that I went, oh, I'd love to have that, and that's a good deal. I wasn't actually going to look for the fly rod. And suddenly I can't live without that fly rod. So the problem is not with what I have. The problem is with becoming aware of what I don't have. You know what I'm saying? And so we're going to talk about one of the most important principles you might have ever heard. If you've come to Shoreline, you've heard it before. If you're new here, you don't even have to be a religious person. You don't have to be a church person. I'm telling you, this principle will save your life. It could save you down the road. Hopefully, it'll help me today because I'm like, how ironic that I'm doing exactly what I'm about to preach about today. But hopefully, this can help you. And that is, because here's what we're going to learn today, and that is this, is that awareness is what fuels discontentment. Becoming aware of what you don't have. See, this is why I'm so discontent. It's because I become aware of what's out there that I don't have. And so what it is it's the awareness of what I don't have, I just mixed up awareness and discontentment. Awareness of what I don't have is what fuels my discontentment. And this explains why getting more stuff doesn't solve the problem. In fact, it's really the opposite. The more I get, the more I want. Right? Because what we're talking about, and we've talked about this before, is appetites. If you know about appetites, the more you feed an appetite, the more that appetite wants. In fact, Thursday, some of y'all sat down and had the best Thanksgiving meal you've ever had. And at the end of the meal, you said to everybody, I'm so stuffed, I can't eat another thing. And then later that night, You snuck off to the refrigerator and you got yourself another piece of pie or a second piece of pie or a turkey sandwich, and then you weren't able to sleep that night and you had to eat Tums because the indigestion, right? Nothing, I wouldn't know that personally. I just hear the stories that you guys tell me. See, we live in a world where every single day someone is feeding that appetite for me to want more things. Now, let's just be fair. There's nothing wrong about advertising, okay? There's nothing wrong with great marketing. We love marketing here at the church. We try to do marketing. It's love. But like Donnie says, it's a little spooky when you're sitting around in the living room. This actually happened to us, sitting around in our living room with another couple, and we were talking about how wouldn't it be cool to take vacation to Iceland? And 5 minutes later in my Facebook feed, what shows up? Vacations in Iceland. I asked Alexa, she says she had nothing to do with it, but I don't think so, right? Now, that can seem unsettling knowing that they're listening to our conversations when it comes to marketing, among other things they're listening to, but when it comes to marketing, but you know what's even more unsettling? Too much credit card debt. You know what's unsettling about not having enough savings because I got a bunch of stuff sitting around my garage or my storage unit or my apartment? You know what else is unsettling? Not having any financial margin. Because no matter how much money you make, if you don't have some kind of margin, you'll never have peace in your finances because peace is always found in the margins. You know what else is unsettling? Acquiring so much stuff, and I don't have I may feel generosity, I may feel generous in my heart, but I can't be generous because my checkbook is there's nothing in there. There's nothing in my account because I have so much stuff that I've gotten or that I'm trying to get. So there's nothing wrong with marketing. There's nothing wrong with advertising. There's nothing wrong with that stuff. It's just when the problem happens, when it gets out of hand, when it gets out of control, where it causes my focus to be on what's next, on the next thing, the next fly rod I want to buy or the next upgrade. Now, before we get too far into this, let me just let you know, not all discontentment is bad. Not all discontentment is bad. There's good discontentment. If you have a bad habit, you got something that's hurting your life, probably New Year's Eve, you're gonna try to make some kind of, what is it called? Resolution, right? You're gonna do something about it. You're gonna do something about it. Maybe there's something in your heart. You can have something in your heart that's good discontentment, that you see how things are and how they should be. You know, we were discontent with the way church was being done, and we wanted to do a church for people who didn't like church. See, that's a good discontentment. If you're at a ceiling in your career and you decide you're gonna do something about it, maybe get your master's degree or MBA or some other education, that's good discontentment. Many great things in the earth have happened because somebody was dissatisfied with the status quo and decided to do something about it. Now, the other thing about discontentment is you can't tame discontentment by just saying, I'm just not gonna be discontent anymore. I'm just not gonna be discontent anymore. It doesn't work that way. You have to replace it with something else. But this is what we're gonna talk about today, and that is this, is that when you get to that place, where you can wrestle discontentment to the ground, where you can replace it with something else, redirect your pursuits, you will find actually, and here's the hard part about it, is we don't discover it until we do it, but we find true life. We find meaning to life. You can find life worth living if we learn how to wrestle discontentment to the ground. So now, to kind of flesh this thing out, we're going to look at a letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to a young man named Timothy. Now, Paul wrote 2 different letters. We call them books of the Bible, but they're actually 2 different letters to this young man that he was mentoring called Timothy. And we're gonna look at 1 Timothy because in 1 Timothy, he makes some statements about contentment that are so powerful that, again, you don't have to be a church person. You don't have to believe in God. Maybe you're here for the holidays and someone dragged you to church, or there's someone good-looking girl promised you lunch or whatever, and you're like, I'll go. That's awesome because the principles today will help you. In fact, they're gonna be on our app. He talked about our app earlier, Donnie did. The notes are on our app, but if you don't have our app, you want to take a picture of the scriptures and the points, these will make great discussions throughout the holidays. And I'm just going to be honest with you again. I prayed that this message would disturb you through your whole Christmas holidays. You're welcome. All right, so we're going to be in 1 Timothy chapter 6, and the first thing that the Apostle Paul says, he says, but godliness with contentment is great gain. So he's like, Peter, you want to gain something? Not Peter. Timothy, you want to gain something? Yes. All right, let me tell you how to gain something. Now, that little Greek word for gain is actually where we get the Greek word mega, like mega millions, mega jackpot. Wasn't there a mega billion lottery recently, or is it coming up, something like that? That's where we get this word. So Paul's like, Timothy, you want contentment? Yeah. Godliness with contentment is mega gain, all right? Godliness with contentment. Now, don't let godliness scare you. Godliness just means to be more like God. It means just, okay, you want to be more like God. What does that mean to be like God? It means that you love people the way he loved people. Why? Because God is love. God loved so much that he gave. So godliness means to just look like God. Now, in the Old Testament, godliness was staying away from things that contaminated you, that made you unclean. Jesus comes along in the New Testament and says, no. Godliness is not about staying away from things. Godliness is about, he says, I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna show you what godliness is about. It's about moving towards the mess. It's about, I'm gonna touch the untouchable. I'm gonna reach those who are outcasts and ostracized. So godliness is not about staying away from something. It's about engaging with people in such a way that their life is better because of it. So Paul says, you wanna gain a lot? Timothy's like, yeah, put people first and be fine with what you have. People first and contentment with what you have. To which we hear this, and in fact, you might be saying, come on, Paul, come on, Eric. We're Americans. We're not buying into that because we're buying everything else, right? Paul says, I'm not finished yet. He says, for we brought nothing into the world. To which you go, what does that have to do with anything, Paul? And here's what he's saying. In other words, you were perfectly content when you got here. Remember that? No. You were the most cherished when you had nothing to offer. You were the most cherished when you owned nothing. And this is Paul's subtle way of saying that you have value beyond what you own. Your value goes to value yourself, to determine your value based on what you own or what you've accomplished, to equate that with your value is a mistake. And then he gives us a corollary, all right? He says, for we brought nothing into the world and we can take nothing out of it. We are not leaving with anything. You ever heard that saying? You ever see a hearse behind a U-Haul behind a hearse? You ever heard that? I actually saw one day, and I wanted to pull him over and go, tell me what's going on here, okay? Is this guy getting buried with all his stuff? No, you are leaving everything. And here's the question that I want to disturb you with, that I hope it disturbs you all the way through Christmas and hopefully into the next year. Maybe it'll disturb you forever. I'm praying that for you. And this question, other than stuff, what will you leave behind? We've been talking a lot about legacy. Other than stuff, what will you leave behind? We're all gonna leave behind our stuff. We know that, right? But the question is, other than stuff, what is it that you will leave behind of some value? See, if that can become the center of our thinking, front and center, if we can allow that to become front and center of our thinking, I can make this promise. It will curb discontentment in you. It will curb the desire for you to have more stuff. It will curb the desire in me to have more stuff and perhaps move us to the area where we become one of those extraordinary people who is moved by something going on, have discontentment of something going on in the world, in our community, actually do something of lasting value that brings great change. So to use Paul's terminology here, and where he uses other places, especially in Philippians, will there be great gain because of your time here on earth? That scares me. Will anything be gained because of your time here in this community, in this country, in this world? Or are you just gonna leave your stuff? So Paul says to Timothy, you want great gain? Find contentment with great gain. If you have godliness with contentment, it's great gain. And then he says, let me tell you how I'm working this out. Now, he's not saying this, he's not asking us to do this, he's not even asking Timothy to do this, but he's just kind of letting us know. That's what preachers do. They let you know how they're applying it. And here's what he says. He says, for we brought nothing into the world. Oh, sorry, we already did that, verse 8. But if we have food and clothing, now he's talking about, when he says we, he's talking about him and his companions. He's saying, listen, if we, me and my companions, if we have food and clothing, we're gonna be content with that. Now, he's not asking you to just live this way, but Paul didn't have a family. Paul was always in peril. He was always traveling. The only thing he had was the clothes on his back. He never knew what day was going to be his last day. And so he says, listen, he knows that godliness, putting other people first, and being married to contentment, I'm happy with what I have, he says it's great mega gain. So he lived this out for us. So the question that you ask then is, okay, if I'm asking the question, what will I leave behind besides my stuff? What did Paul leave behind? Well, what did the Apostle Paul leave behind? For one, he left behind letters that shaped Western culture for 2,000 years. Think about this. 2,000 years later, we're standing here reading a letter that Paul wrote that we're using to shape our thinking as we move into the holiday season. Paul, what you leaving behind? You leaving behind your stuff? No, I don't have any stuff. So I'm just gonna write some things that shaped the world for 2,000 years, right? You know what else he left behind? He left behind, I wish I had time to get more into this, theology that would disrupt an empire. I mean, he left a stream of churches across the Mediterranean rim that changed the way the world, it's changed the way we do church, right? So Paul, what are you saying? Paul's saying, I'm saying you want great gain? You have to take your focus off your stuff. Now, let me just make it perfectly clear, there's nothing wrong with stuff, but you don't want to get to the end of your life and all you have to show for it is stuff. Don't you want more? Don't you want to leave behind something significant? Isn't that what the word legacy, which is one of our values, isn't what that is? So what is it that needs to capture your attention? What is it that needs to break your heart? And how can we use that to channel our awareness? Because remember, awareness is what fuels discontentment. Awareness of what you don't have fuels that discontentment with what you do have. So how can we channel it as it relates to discontentment so that it makes a difference in the world? Aren't you glad you came to church today? Because you're feeling really good about yourself, aren't you? I live in Destin. Yeah, that's what I said. Okay, so he says in verse 9, he says, those who want to get rich, somebody should say get rich. Those who want to get rich fall into a temptation and a trap. He's saying, listen, anyone who targets wealth for wealth's sake, in other words, that's their sole focus. Attaining stuff is number one. I am first on my list. It's about me. I know we're going into Christmas, but I need a fly rod. It's about me. He says, for those that's your goal, that's what you're trying to attain, there are traps and temptations for people whose focus is more, to which we think, I've never heard of that. I know, it's a trap. See, this is why we think if we won the lottery, we'd be perfectly fine. But you don't know because you've never walked in those shoes. And there are traps that you've never experienced and you're not aware of them. Now, the thing is, you might be sitting here going, well, he's talking to rich people. No, look back what it says. Those who want to get rich. This isn't just for rich people. It's for everyone who has a desire that's their main focus is to get rich. Those who want to get rich fall into a temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. Aren't you really glad you came to church this morning, right? Now, that funny little word, another Greek word, plunge, it actually means like you're driving along and the bridge is out and you plunge to your death, or you fall off a cliff and you plunge to your death, or you step off a wall. His point is this: unbridled discontentment can be very dangerous. It can plunge you into credit card debt. It can plunge you into a lease that you can't afford or a mortgage that you can't afford. It can plunge you into no savings. It can plunge you into no giving. It can plunge you into, I want to give, I'm generous in my heart, but my wallet has been plunged into no margin. It can plunge you into all you do is work, no time with the family. Paul says, you stepped into a trap. One that you thought you were too smart. No, that wouldn't happen to me. If I won the lottery or that wouldn't happen to me. Paul says, look, I'm just telling you how, in fact, don't get angry at me. I'm just telling you how Paul's saying the world works, okay? And then he kind of repeats himself to make sure we're paying attention. He says, for the love, the devil doesn't want you to know this. He says, for the love, this is one of the most misquoted scriptures, isn't it? For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Now, nobody loves money, right? That was a joke, right? Of course, people love money. The problem is you just can't see it in yourself. You can't see when you have the love of money. So how do you know then? How do you know? Because I've never heard anyone come to counseling with me and go, well, you know, Eric, I think my problem is I just love money too much. It doesn't happen that way. So let me give you some things to help you figure out if you have the love of money. Number one is, what are you willing to do for it? What are you willing to do for it? Now, let's relate it to love. When you were in love and you were young, you did some crazy things, right? Snuck out at night, lied to your parents. Oh, look, one in the back row, she's like, I just did that last night. I'm just kidding. Lied to your parents, sneak out at night, buy her something because that's something that you can't afford and it's way too expensive and you just better. Fall in love with your boyfriend and fail your English class and have to take summer school so you can graduate. I'm not saying that happened to Darlene, I'm just saying. Because I'm in love and I don't care who knows it, right? So what are the crazy things that you are willing to do or I'm willing to do for money? Who are you willing to hurt for it? Who or what gets prioritized behind it? Is there somebody at home that's competing for your stuff, competing for your time, competing for your love? And I love it because when you talk to guys about this, they go, well, I'm just trying to make sure that she's taken care of, my family's taken care of one day when I'm gone. So I put all this time in to make sure that they're taken care of. But you're gone so much, you know what your wife and kids are probably saying? I wish he'd go ahead and be gone then, because he's not here anyway. So we don't have you or your stuff. So if you'd go, at least we'd have your stuff. And besides, who are you kidding? Nobody believes you when you say you don't like work. Nobody believes you when you say you don't like the travel or the dinners or whatever it is. And we're left here competing for your stuff, and we can't compete. If that you might be one of those people that have fallen into a trap because of the love of money. I know, it gets better, I'm telling you. Paul turns the corner here. See, that's the way it works. You want to give people the disease, and then when you get the antidote, they're like, please help us. So he says, for the love of money is the root of all kind of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith. He uses a different word than plunge. See, plunge is sudden. Plunge is like boom. He says, no, they've wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. And so he's basically saying, it's funny because he's just repeating himself. He says the love of money, the eager for money, wanting to get rich, all of those things, he says have pierced themselves with many griefs. Now, here's the problem is we get so busy with church, you get so busy at work, you get so busy with the God thing, and then you have vacations and you got the property or the hunting land up in Alabama or the house on the beach or whatever, that after a while, he says rich people, they get so caught up in their stuff that over time, their view on God changes and they don't plunge, they just wander from the faith. They just kind of move over in this direction, and before you know it, they really don't believe the things about God that they used to believe because they wandered away. And then it says that they pierce themselves with many griefs. See, and the issue with piercing yourself is most of the time, you don't know, and when it's coming to this, you don't know that you're the one that did it. That you're the one that wandered away from the faith. You're the one that fell into the temptation or trap. You're the one that took a different view of God, so you kind of begin to blame someone else. And that's why we have to go all the way back to the beginning and get a hold of discontentment, because discontentment is dangerous. Now, he kind of takes a turn on this negative stuff. Someone say hallelujah, right? And he gets into some stuff that's really profound and very beautiful. Because it's not enough to say, I'm just not gonna be discontent. It doesn't work because awareness fuels your discontentment. He says you have to channel it. So he says, verse 11, but you, man of God, flee from all this. In other words, you can't just sit around and go, I'm not gonna be discontent, I'm not gonna be discontent, I'm not gonna be discontent. You have to be aware of it, and then you have to flee from it. But you don't just flee from it, you have to pursue something else. So what do you pursue? He says, but you, man of God, flee from all this and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness, to which we go, but I can't catch a fish on that, right? Here's what he's saying. In other words, you don't just say, I'm not gonna be discontent. is that you pursue things like my chief pursuit is going to be to do the right thing. My chief pursuit is going to be right with God. I am going to be godly. I'm going to pursue faith. I'm going to pursue being part of God's plan. I'm going to pursue the fruit of the Spirit in my life. In other words, contentment is found by redirecting our awareness. Because instead of being aware of what I don't have, instead I'm going to be aware of what I do have, and I'm going to pursue the right things. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to be discontent. I've got to chase something else. I've got to redirect my pursuit. Now, the thing you have to remember this, Apostle Paul, when he wrote this, Paul had been in both places. When he was a Jewish, he was a Jewish religious leader. He was at the top of the Jewish ladder. He had everything. He had wealth. He had influence, all of those things. And he knew what it was like to have a lot. But he also, when he became a Christ follower, knew what it was like to not have anything. So he's not dissing rich people at all. Don't get me there. Don't get me wrong there. But here's what he's about to say. This has nothing to do with how much money you have. This has nothing to do with how much money you make. Has nothing to do with how much stuff you've acquired or how much you've accomplished. And here's why I say that, because then he addresses rich people. Verse 7, he tells Timothy, command those who are rich in this present world not to be, and before we find out what that not to be is, let me just tell you, he's talking to most of us, okay? We are rich, okay? We're in the top 1% of the world of wage earners. If you don't feel rich, it's probably because you have no margin in your finances and your lifestyle, okay? But here, let me give you some examples, okay? If you get home today and there's an Amazon box on your porch and you don't know what's in it till you open it, you have extra, okay? He's talking to those of us who go to Home Depot or Target for one thing and come out with a cart full of stuff that we didn't know we needed, okay? You have extra. If you have money or change in your car because you have extra. If you have a refrigerator in your garage because you don't have enough room for food in your refrigerator in the kitchen, you have extra, okay? So he's talking to those who's saying, those of you who have extra, don't be, and you would think that if you're reading this for the first time, don't be so greedy. Don't be so rich. Don't hoard it up. Look what he says. He says, where are we at? So command those who are rich in this world to not be, to not be, come on, how did it change? Generous, right. Command those, there it is, not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain. He says, listen, that word hope and wealth, that means, don't be so arrogant that you put your trust like in wealth, that you put it out front, that it's number one pursuit. Don't allow wealth and acquiring stuff to be your number one desire. So how do you do that? How do you keep from doing that? He says, by placing something else. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God. And I love this last verse. It's one of my favorite verses in the Bible that maybe you didn't even know is in here, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Did you even know that was in the New Testament? God has given you all this to enjoy. God has given you all this stuff that you have to enjoy. He's not against you having stuff. He's against the stuff having you. And what Paul's saying is, I want you to enjoy what God has given you, but I don't want you to become so dissatisfied with what you don't have that you don't enjoy what you do have. To which we go, okay, Paul, well, what do we do? He says, I'll tell you, verse 18. He says, command, he's talking to Peter, command them, that's talking about rich people, to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. Now, this probably sounds unusual, like why does he have to tell them to do good? Because rich people, we're busy, aren't we, right? Because we're all rich in this place. We are, compared to the world standards. We're rich, and we end up doing what we want to do. We end up doing what we can, because after a while, what happens is, after a while, there might be a stretch where I don't do anything good for anybody. Because when you're wealthy, it can become all about you. I know. Should be online shopping for Christmas presents, and I'm buying a fly rod today. I would back out of it because I'm convicted, but I can't. I already gave the guy my word. I don't want to dishonor God by lying. And my wife's not here today either, so. But do you want to get to the end of no one wants to get to the end of their life and all you have to show for it is stuff. So he says, command them to be rich in good deeds. In other words, when they look at you and someone goes, wow, they sure have a lot of stuff, other people could go, yeah, but you should see what they do with it. You should see the people they help. Paul says, I want you to do more than the average person when it comes to good deeds. Why? Because you have more. And do you want to just leave stuff at the end of your life? That's all you leave? No. So this is Paul's way of telling Timothy to tell rich people. He says, tell rich people to develop a lifestyle of giving and generosity and sharing. Otherwise, you're just gonna consume your way through life, and at the end of your life, you're gonna get the end, and all you have to show for it is stuff. And then he gets to the good part. He gets to the why. He gets to the end, the antidote, the blessing. Verse 19, in this way, they, rich people, us, will lay up treasures for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they, look at this, may take hold of the life that is truly life. And what's so difficult, this is such a great statement, but what's difficult about it is that we don't really comprehend the true life that is attainable for us until we do this. Because meanwhile, we're consumed with what's the next upgrade, what's the next thing, what's the next best thing, and we don't get there. Paul says, when you learn to wrestle discontentment to the ground, when you learn to allow the important things in life to have your undivided attention, when you come to the realization that the most important things in life is not how much you make or how much you have or what you drive, he says that's when you will find true life that is worth living, where there is contentment, not only in this life, but he says you're building a foundation for the age to come. And this is our invitation. This is what I want to wreck us, because life becomes truly life when it's given away. Life becomes truly life when it's given away, because in reality, in God's realm, the value of life is determined by how much of it was given away. When you go to a funeral, you never hear him talk about, and he had 4 cars and 3 boats. They never talk about what was consumed or what he hoarded or what he possessed. He had the best Velvet Elvis collection in the South. Velvet Elvis paintings, right? You know what they talk about? What they did for others. Because the value of life is determined by how much is given away. That's how you leave a legacy. And so Paul was right way back in the beginning when he said, but godliness with contentment is mega gain. So what I wanted to do, 2 things I wanted to do here today. I want to make sure we get in a good mindset as we go into the holiday season, because there's so much opportunity for doing good and for being good and to be generous. But the idea is that we don't just do it once a year. The idea is that what consumes us, the life that we attain when we live this life, will continue to fuel us all the way through next year. So let's enjoy what we have, but let's not be deceived. Let's not plunge ourselves into ruin. Because discontentment is bridled by redirecting our awareness. See, if I'd have never got on that website this morning, I would have never seen that fly rod that I didn't know that I needed. See, we've got to redirect our awareness. So how do you redirect it? Well, as your pastor, for those of you who call me pastor, those who are watching online, I'm going to tell you how to do that. He said, command those who are rich. You're rich, I'm commanding you. Number 1, do some good. Do some good. As we go into the holiday season, find out, I'm not gonna give you specifics because you know what? You're smart people. I know that because you go to Shoreline Church. You're smart people. So where can you do some good in your church? Where can you do some good in your community? Where can you do some good with your family? Where can you do some good? Begin to, instead of making yourself aware of what you don't have, what if you begin to make yourself aware of what other people don't have? That's where you could do some good. Number 2, be rich in good deeds. And I love how he phrases this, because we love to look at our numbers, don't we? I mean, I love to look and see how much is in my account on my app. I love to see that I have enough for a flyer. No, I love to see what's in my portfolio, that my real estate has gone up or gone down. What if you started a good deeds account and you kept track of deposits that you made into it, just like you contributed into your 401k? Every year, Twice a year, we do the serve day, right? How many did serve day this last year? You know, the idea isn't that we just serve our community twice a year. The idea is that maybe you get inspired and you go back to, I haven't done it yet, and I went to the children's, the Children in Crisis? What is it? The one we mowed the lawn, isn't that Children in Crisis? Children in Crisis. And I got to drive a John Deere tractor. And I said, how many times? He goes, we have volunteers come here once a week. I said, so what if I just volunteered once a month? He said, that'd be amazing. And then I get to drive a John Deere tractor. What if you did, so instead of just serving the community twice, we're hoping that you take one of those things and go, oh, you know what? This is something I can do on a regular basis. Why? Because I'm rich in good deeds. And then number 3, and you know another one? Is that Secret Santa that's coming up? Is Dr. Rich, you're in here. We're doing Secret Santa, right? Secret Santa is where we pay off, layaways, not layoffs, pay off because they got laid off. We pay off layaways at Walmart and Kmart for families who have children. So there's some things that you can do this holiday season, but I'm hoping that it stretches into the new year. And then lastly, be generous and willing to share. That is actually 2 different things, okay? That's why I love this statement as well. Be generous and willing to share. See, generosity comes in the margin, right? When I have margin between what I make and my lifestyle, then I can be generous. When we're not generous, we can be generous. When our lifestyle is slapping up against our salaries, then I don't have any margin, then I can't be generous. I can feel generous in my heart, but I can't be generous. So that's why you've got to learn to get margin, because then you have peace and then you can be generous, okay? So generosity is the antidote to selfishness. Generosity is the antidote to materialism, to discontentment, to consumerism. Generosity. Have you ever given something away because it was supposed to be the right thing to do? I remember I had a missionary that came to visit us, and he goes, "Man, I like your sunglasses." And I was like, "Here, take them." He was like, "No, you don't really want to give them away." "No, I do. I do want to give them away." And then he's grabbing them, and I'm not let go of them, Because sometimes in other words, to get my heart to follow, I get my heart to follow my actions by being generous, even when I don't feel like being generous. Now, here's what's going on. This is the last week of I Can See Clearly Now. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this because as we move into Narnia, again, Narnia is an invite. We want you to invite your friends. We're not going to be talking about finances. We're not going to be talking about money. So this is the last week that we can talk about. And what I wanted to do is kind of catch you up, because this is we're in this initiative called All In, where we are trying to pay off this building so that we leave a legacy, because we don't want to just leave stuff. We want to leave a legacy. We say, well, isn't the building stuff? What we're going to do is take this debt off this next generation of leaders so that they can minister to people and be free, because remember, generosity is found in the margins. If you think that we're generous now because you can take money out of the bucket, imagine when we can create some more margin for this church and this next generation of leaders. And so we're in the last month. It's kind of like the last leg of the relay race. And I wanted to just let you know where we are, okay? And so if you want to know where we are, and I'm just telling you, really excited where we are. It's a 5-minute video. It's in the app, or you can scan this right now. Go there, and there's a video because I don't have time to get into all the details, but I will tell you that we're around 350,000 have come in. And our goal is to get to 400,000. And when we get to 400,000, we will have raised $1,050,000. So I'm excited, but go to that video and watch this, because I am so pumped about finishing this year strong and leaving behind something besides stuff. And I'm so pumped about celebrating what God has done. So let me ask you, no matter what you have or don't have, would you put somebody first financially this year? And would you put somebody first in the terms of doing good deeds? And is there something in your heart that breaks your heart? Is there something where you're dissatisfied with the status quo, where you're discontent, where you can make a difference in your community, like Secret Santa or Sanctuary Friends? Or is there something in there that you can do that can make your community better, that can make your world better? And it's so easy to do this time of year. But again, we're not just Christmas and Easter Christians. We are followers of Christ 24/7. And here's my promise to you. Here's my promise. If you do this, what I'm talking about, you will enjoy what you have, and you will never be discontent about what you don't have. If you do this, what you don't have will not bother you, and you will actually enjoy what you do have. And Paul says, when you get to this place, you will have truly life. Now, let me just say this one thing. This is how much we want this for you. It's not what we want from you, it's what we want for you. If for some reason you think, I don't know if I can trust this church, or you can't get behind this organization, I want you to achieve this so much in your life, then find an organization that you can put your finances, your resources, your time in, so that you can, because I want you to get to this place. And if you don't think you can get to it here, then do it somewhere else. That's how much I want this. Because you are already godly. If you've put your trust in what Jesus Christ has done, godliness is not based on what you do. It's based on what he did. And if you have already put your trust in Jesus, then you are godly. If you can marry this with contentment, I'm happy with what I have. Paul says that it's mega gain and it's a life worth living. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for your word. Godliness with contentment is great gain. And this morning, if you're here and you've never, with your head bowed and eyes closed, because I want this to be between you and God, if you've never put your trust in what Jesus has done on the cross, in other words, you've never said, Jesus, I believe that you died for me, that you died for my sins so that I wouldn't have to pay for my sins. So today, I put my trust in that act of what you did, that act of sacrifice, and I receive eternal life. That's all it takes, is a prayer like that. And if you've never prayed that, we would love to pray that with you. Over here in our, you'll see over here on the left, a prayer tent. You just go after service and they can pray you through that prayer. But that godliness with being content with what we have, even in the midst of society that tries to push us to buy more things, that it's great gain, it's mega life, it's truly life that we get to experience. And Father, I'm thankful that I get to pastor a church where I can tell rich people to be generous, to do good deeds, and be willing to share. Be rich in good deeds and willing to share. Lord, we're thankful for that. We love you and honor you. In Jesus' name, amen.